please join with me in welcoming Mr. Maury Forman.
Thank you, Paul. That's just how I wrote the bio for you to read. Can you hear me okay? About now? Just good enough for people? About now? Yeah. Good boy. I always have to ask that question anyway in the beginning of any of my remarks, because it wasn't too long ago I was giving a speech and I noticed there was some sort of disturbance in the back of the room. So I asked if there was a problem, and a gentleman in the back of the room stood up and said that he had not heard a single word I said for the last 20 minutes. And immediately 5 people from the front of the room got up and walked to the back of the room. So, well, the last couple of years have not really been kind to many rural communities and small towns across the United States. Washington certainly hasn't been immune from the downturn in the economy that has taken place. We have certainly seen business closings, we've seen companies relocate, we have seen declining populations. And while the economy lately has been looking pretty good for the private sector, we still are probably suffering from a public sector recession that has taken place because of all the cutbacks in the budget. Certainly USDA has been an organization that has felt that over the last several years as well. But and this is particularly true, by the way, in communities and regions that have state capitals, because state capitals have really felt those budget cuts, and as a result what has happened is all that surrounding areas and the regions have felt them as well. But when you take a look at Thurston County, you have to feel pretty good about pretty much a lot of the economic development that has taken place over in Thurston County. So I don't know if people are aware of some of these things, like the Ice Chips candy. This is the 2 grandmas in the garage that work out of the Olympia area. Ice Chips candy started out by selling their product in about 14 stores. Now they have about 1,400 stores that they're in. They have made an appearance on the Shark Tank, and that's part of the reason why they got all this publicity. Great little company. Olympia Orthopedic has moved in here as well. They are probably the Northwest's largest and most comprehensive orthopedic area in the Northwest. They have about 35,000 square feet of clinical space. Trader Joe's has their distribution center here. Bird-friendly products, a very well-known eco-friendly product, and is well-known across the United States as well. Southside Entrepreneurial Center. I don't know if people know about this, but they're building an entrepreneurial center in the Thurston County area. It's probably going to be completed about December 2014. You have great colleges here. You have Evergreen State College, St. Martin's, South Puget Sound Community College. You've got a great creative arts community. In fact, what's interesting, you're one of the few areas that actually measures the economic impact that arts have in a community. And that's really nice to hear, because it does have a significant impact. You've got a great downtown. You've got things like Girls' Night Out, Music in the Park, Arts Walk. And this is a community that has about 50 companies with 100 or more employees. And that truly is very impressive amongst state capitals as well. People are talking about economic development in Thurston County. They're reading about economic development. But I was in a hotel room not too long ago in Olympia, and I was having trouble sleeping one night. So I did what most people do when they have trouble sleeping, is they pick up a book, hope that it'll make them drowsy, they'll be able to go to sleep after that. Well, unfortunately, I didn't have a book with me. So I looked around the room and I saw this dresser. I went over to the dresser, I opened up the drawer, and the first word, I took this book out, I sat down, and the first words that I read were, "And in the beginning, the earth was without form. It was void and filled with darkness." And I went, ooh, it's going to be a good book, a mystery of some kind. I don't really know the name of the book. It was about that thick, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to finish it. So I got to the very back of the book, because what you do with mysteries, you go to the back of the book and see who did it. So I went to the very back of the book, and the first words that I read there were, "And from that void, and from that darkness, came prosperity." And I thought to myself, this is amazing. Even in your hotel rooms, you have books about economic development. And I just thought that was just a very good marketing tool. So congratulations for that. Well, Economic development may have been around over the last 2,000 years, but the profession of economic development is still a little bit misunderstood. I mean, people really don't understand what economic development is or what economic developers do. I mean, if you talk to people about economic development, all of a sudden they come back to start thinking about economics. You know, they remember they think it was a great class in college because it was a great class to sleep in. I mean, that's what you did in economics courses. So, but if you ask 10 people to define economic development, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. And how can anybody be successful if everybody has a different understanding or a different interpretation of exactly what it is that you do? You can't do that. It doesn't happen. So what I would like to do today, so what I've been asked to do today, is to sort of explain economic development a little and give you some ideas and thoughts about how I think economic development can change and how communities can be sustainable, especially rural communities. Okay? So what I would like to do is, rather than trying to define what economic development is, what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask another question. I'd like to ask, why do communities even want economic development? What's the number one reason why communities want economic development? Just shout out anything, I don't care. Jobs. Absolutely. That has been the mantra for economic development for the last 50 years. And while a vital aspect of economic development, it's not the only thing that can stimulate and sustain growth in an economy. We need to have a new consciousness in economic development. And that new consciousness has to say that there's more to economic development than just jobs. What about the idea of raising incomes? What about increasing the tax base? What about helping local industries, stabilizing the economy? All of these things you see on the board are reasons why communities may in fact want to have economic development. And they may create jobs, but you know, they may not. That's not necessarily the purpose. Now don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that jobs aren't important. Jobs are important. First of all, they're politically feasible. We know that, and that's pretty important. Second of all, it's a good measurement. We're always trying to find measurements that are important, in other words, especially for our funding agents. And it's good for planners as well. Communities would like to know the type of jobs they're going to have, the numbers of jobs that they're going to need in order to grow that particular community. But if people believe that the primary responsibility of an economic developer is to create jobs, then they are setting them up for failure. Because we all know that economic developers don't create jobs. Businesses do. The primary responsibility of economic developers is to create healthy communities so that job creation can take place. And those communities, by the way, that do that, those economic development organizations do that, are the ones that are going to survive because they add value. So keep that in mind. I know that jobs have always been an emphasis in economic development, but we truly need to get a better understanding of what that means to communities and to the economic developer's role. So what I would like to do today is I would like to see if we can recognize economic development if, in fact, it was right in front of us. Okay, so let's pretend I have a community here. Okay, let's pretend that this table here is a community, okay? This is a great-looking community. This is a community of people that have jobs, they own their own business, they have employees, they have money. You have plenty of money in your pocket, don't you? I'm going to give you this. This is your money. Well, we find plenty of different ways. Okay. This is a community, and everybody in this community is getting money. Okay. Okay. You get some too. Okay. Now, what I want you to do though for that money is I want you to just continue passing it back and forth, just like you're a community. That's right. And I'm going to go and talk to somebody else from it. Let me ask everybody else: is this economic development? No, it's not. And the reason it's not is because all they're doing is passing money back and forth. This is a community that's going to have the same amount of money at the end of the day as they do at the beginning of the day. This is a community that knows how to make a dollar. This is a community that knows how to stretch a dollar, but this is not a community that knows how to create a dollar. So how do you create dollars in a community? Well, if I were to offer you $5 to actually come with me, told you to have a good time and you come home with something, would you do it? First one $7.
I'll go.
How about if I told you that this presentation would be over quicker if you get my money? Would you take $100? 6? 7? Anybody at this table? Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to make sure you're all here. Here's $7, and I want you to come with me for just a minute, okay? Tough group here, Mario. Obviously, USDA needs no money.
I'm a business specialist.
Oh, I see. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to put this money, but you can. This isn't even a growth community at all. They even quit passing money. But what I want you to do is I want you to take that money, I want you to put it in this community right here, and just stay here for a minute while I ask everybody else. Now, is that economic development? It is. It is economic development. What I've done is I've taken money from the outside, this person right here, and she's invested in this community. And by the way, anytime somebody invests in your community, you want to make sure they get something back for it. So I'm going to show you what you got from this community for all of these things. Why don't you just hold this bag here, and you get a box of local fudge.
All right.
You get a book that I wrote that I sold about 15 copies of, so I'm trying to get it in. And you also get some Washington wine for it. Now, there are a couple things I want you to learn from this whole scenario. And the first is I didn't hold up $5 in the air to say, does anybody want to come with me? But that's what they used to do in the old days, and they used to call it smokestack chasing. Smokestack chasing was nothing more than throwing money at a company and getting it to relocate into another area. Economic developers didn't care if it was green, they didn't care if it was clean, they didn't care if it was legal or illegal. Their only goal, throw money at a company, relocate a business into a particular company. And usually these are manufacturing companies, oftentimes low-collar, blue-collar, low-wage, blue-collar jobs, okay? I didn't do that, didn't just hold up $5 in the air and say, does anybody want to come with me? What I did do is before this presentation even began, I looked around the room and I said, who do I want to pick on? Who do I want to play with? Now, you can't do this in your personal life. It's illegal. It's called stalking. Okay? But you can do it in your economic development life, and it's called targeting. And targeting is essentially being able to identify the best possible prospect to achieve your economic development goals. Okay? Now, one of the things you need to realize about this, when you talk about targeting, most people, when you talk about targeting, talk about the idea of recruitment, about the idea of aiming at a particular company and going after it and bringing it into an area. But just keep this in mind. There are about 150 to 200 companies, different companies every year that relocate. And there are about 15 to 20,000 communities across the United States that would love to have a company relocated in their area. So I'm not saying to communities that you shouldn't recruit and go after a company. I'm merely saying make sure that it is one of your best prospects so you can achieve your economic development goals. Okay? So when you take a look at your targets, there are a couple other things you want to be aware of. When you have a target, you want to make sure that they're going to complement your existing businesses. You don't want them to be competitive with your existing business. What's the point of bringing a business into your community and then losing another business? It's a win-lose situation. You don't want to have that. You want to have a win-win situation. Also, when you take a look at a target, you want them to be a part of your community as well. You want them to be to volunteer. You want them to be philanthropic. You want them to join the Boys and Girls Clubs and the United Ways and the Rotary. You want them to enjoy all the benefits of trying to create healthy communities through these social organizations. That's what you want to do. And by the way, Eco-Friendly, that company I told you about, as soon as they relocated into the Olympia area, they donated $5,000 to the Boys and Girls Club. Those are the types of businesses that you want to have. Those that will help create healthy communities in your community. Because the goal, once again, is to have more money at the end of the day than it is at the beginning of the day. Take a look at this particular sign here. This sign, for those who can't read it, there's plenty of room for all God's creatures right next to the mashed potatoes. Now, who do you think they're trying to target for there. Do you think they're targeting maybe the ASPCA to come for a convention in their particular community? Probably not. I don't think so. The other thing that I want you to learn from this little scenario is that I only had $7 in my pocket. Obviously, these people didn't take those $7, so I had to move on to a different target. But the reason I only had $7 in my pocket was because I had done an economic impact analysis. And an economic impact analysis essentially measures the economic impact that a target's going to have on a community. So you want to make sure, as people are coming into your community, you have the right amount of infrastructure. Keep in mind, these people are going to be traveling on your roads. You'd like to prevent all these potholes, so you want to make sure that you have money in the budget to continue to fix those potholes. You want to make sure that you have enough teachers in your community so that you can have lower class sizes, so that they can have better learning experiences. You want to make sure that you have the right medical healthcare organizations, enough doctors and nurses so that you can get an appointment to the doctor when you want to. You want to make sure that you have a positive financial impact on your community. We hear about incentives all the time. We talk about oftentimes the hundreds of thousands of dollars per job that we're bringing into the community. And incentives may be a good thing. It's a necessary evil, to tell you the truth. But you want to make sure that you are not bankrupting your community. And I'm not just talking about your current existing generation, I'm talking about the next generation as well. Okay? And then the third thing I want you to learn from this little scenario is that this woman had no idea where she was going. Thank you for volunteering to do this. She had no idea where she was going or what she was going to get. Did you have a good time in this community? Was it a friendly community? Would you come back to this community? Would you bring your friends? Absolutely. And you know what? This may be a woman who's a CEO of a company and say that I like this community so much, I'm going to relocate my business here. That stuff happens. It happens all the time. How many times have you gone on vacation, you've gone into a community and you've said to your partner, gee, I could live in this community. So you go into one of the stores and you ask what's there to do in this community, and the 19, 20, or 21-year-old behind the desk, behind the cash register says, there's nothing to do in this community. You don't even want to be in this community. You want to be in Seattle, you want to be in Spokane, you want to be in Bellingham, anywhere but this community. I mean, have you heard that? Maybe you've heard it from your own communities. It's up to economic developers to realize that economic development is about customer service. And I'm so glad to see that you have customer service on your agenda later on today, because customer service is important in economic development. Nobody is going to come and invest in your community or relocate in your community who have not visited there. And that's why you want to make sure that businesses are aware of this, and they teach their employees to engage the customer, to talk about the customer, not only about the products and services that they sell, but also about the products and services that exist in your community. Talk to them about the homegrown products. Talk to them about the products and services that are made in that particular community. The longer you can keep a person in a community, the better chance you have of having them spend money. Talk to them about the events that are coming up in your community, whether it's your art walks or your music night or girls' night out or whatever it is in your particular community. Once again, if you can get them back in the community, there's a good chance they're going to spend money, because the overall goal, try and have more money at the end of the day than you do at the beginning of the day. That's what economic development looks like. Oh, I forgot to mention to you, I'm sorry. I'm a member of this community as well. I love living in this community. It's a great community. It's a community filled with entrepreneurs. I, unfortunately, am not an entrepreneur, but I work for the government. And guess what division I work for in the government? Taxes. Revenue. But keep your money for just a little bit here, because I want to tell you a little story about what I did. I took your last quarter taxes, and I say to myself, I love this community so much that if ever I got so much money, I would like to share that money with everybody in the community. So I took your last quarterly taxes, and I took hundreds and hundreds of dollars from them, and I bought lottery tickets. I bought lots and lots of lottery tickets. But before you get upset with me, let me also tell you what I did. I won. I won the lottery. So now, rather than just getting $5 or $10 or $15, everybody in this community is going to get tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars. I don't have it on me right now, but I'm good for it. But let me ask everybody else, is that economic development? I've taken money from the outside, the lottery, and I put it on the inside here. Is that economic development? No, it's not. And the reason it's not economic development is because it is not a long-term infusion of wealth into the economy. What's long-term, you may ask? Some people are going to think this presentation is getting to be a little long-term. But long-term is not necessarily a measurement of time. It is a measurement of sustainability. When you ask a business person about sustainability, they'll talk about being able to keep their business open as long as possible. As long as they have a product and a service with loyal customers, as long as those loyal customers will tell their friends and they become loyal customers as well, as long as that business has a product or service that they can continue to innovate, that business is going to be sustainable. Well, it's the same thing with communities. Communities have a product. Communities have a service. What is it that they have? Well, it's the reason why you live in a community. You live in a community because of good roads, good parks, good neighborhoods, good schools. All of those are reasons why people live in a community. And if you continue to provide those services, people will continue to live there. But there's one other thing that you need to have in order to have a sustainable community. And that's the idea of opportunities. And opportunities come in the form of workforce development. And workforce development, by the way, is a statewide system of education and training that will make businesses, that will make employees productive and businesses sustainable. Not having an acceptable workforce is an absolute showstopper no matter how good everything else is in your community. Okay? So keep in mind that when I talk about education, I'm not just talking about a 4-year college degree where you get a BA or a BS. I'm not talking necessarily about that. And the reason I'm not is because, in fact, I just read this 2 weeks ago in the paper where they talked about 40% of the jobs that are going to be created up until 2018 are not going to require a BA degree. Instead, they may require some sort of certification. And keep in mind that it doesn't matter whether you're getting a job in the military, whether you get a job in government or the private sector, they're going to spend more money on the education and training of their employees than all the colleges and universities combined. That's an incredible amount. And that's why it's so important for economic developers to work with the community college system, to work with their universities, and to work with the businesses and find out what sort of things are they going to need so that they can grow a business in your community. You know, they say that there are 3 types of people in the workforce. We call them BLTs. And the boomerangers are those people who are educated and experienced in a particular community, decide to go off to college, maybe they get a job somewhere, and they decide to come back. The lifers are those people who never change their zip code. They were born in a particular community, they're going to die in that community. Same zip code their entire life. And the transplants are those people who have products and services, and they see products and services in a particular community, and they also see opportunities, and they decide that they want to relocate there. So if that's the case, that means that most of your workforce is going to come from the people who were educated in your particular community. So take a good look at the kids that are coming out of your community right now, out of schools right now. Because they're going to be the backbone of your community possibly for the next 50 years. If they're hardworking, if they get good grades, if they've had a mentor, if they participated in an intern program, if they've learned a skill, if they participated in a business plan competition, your community is going to be sustainable. On the other hand, if you have kids that with low test scores, with high dropout rates, never had a mentor, never participated in an intern program, don't know any skills, don't even know how to spell the word entrepreneur, your community is not going to be sustainable. Businesses are not going to want to pass down their businesses to someone who's going to make it fail. Think about it. 50 years. So if you want to have a sustainable community, you want to make sure that you have a community with good educational facilities. You want to make sure that they also have good state-of-the-art tools. You want to make sure that there are opportunities to upgrade the skills of your community. And you also want to make sure that you can develop good business and education partnerships for the purpose primarily of bringing people together to make your community sustainable. That's what economic development looks like. Okay? Okay, let's pretend that this box of fudge is economic development. Okay? I'm going to give fudge to Mario right here. So I can say that Mario lives in this community, has economic development. Okay? Now, can you say that this community has economic development? How many people remember something called the syllogism method of reasoning that you may have learned in college, or you may not even remember college, it's like me. But the syllogism method of reasoning essentially states that if the first statement of fact is true, followed by a second statement of fact, then the third one must be true. So if I were to say that Mario has economic development and lives in this community, Shayna lives in this community, therefore Shayna's got economic development. Is that true? Who's got the fudge? Is he sharing it with anybody?
No.
Who's benefiting from it? Just Mario. What a jerk Mario is. Yeah, I don't work for him. I can say that. If you want to know whether you have economic development, take a look and see where the money is going. And if you have more money going outside the community than coming inside, you have something called leakage. And any time a doctor, a plumber, or an economic developer uses the word leakage, you have to deal with that, right? So how do communities deal with the issue of economic leakage? Well, there's a number of ways that they're looking at, but the primary one that people are looking right now at is buy local programs. Buy local programs. I actually don't like the term buy local. What I do like instead, because buy local sort of indicates that you should buy everything local, and we all know we can't do that. We can't buy everything local. I mean, if we did that, truly we would destroy our entire economic system, and we have plenty of other ways to destroy our economic system. We don't need just to have a whole bunch of buy local programs everywhere. But what we do need to have is something called think local first. Because we want people to recognize that there are things in their community that they can buy and they need to be aware of. And why should you do that? Well, first of all, it's good for the environment. You can go ahead and buy your products and services at big box stores, and that's, maybe fine because it's cheaper. But if you are a community that is interested in reducing your carbon footprint, then you want to make sure that you think about buying local. Because keep in mind, those big box stores, traveling all over the United States, using oil, using gas, using our roads, using all those popcorn material to protect their products that they have. It increases your carbon footprint. So the number one reason that you want to do that is it will help reduce your carbon footprint. The second reason, which is pretty logical, I think, for everybody, is that more money will stay in the community. Study after study shows that if you buy from a local store, 3 times as much money will stay in the community than if you bought at a big box store. Okay? So you want to make sure that spend money and it's going to be spread around. The third reason is, wouldn't it be nice if you knew the people that grew your food or made your products or made your services? I mean, right now, I think that what we have is an anonymous-driven economy. We don't really know who we're buying our products from at all. We need to have more of a sort of like a one-night. What we have right now is a one-night stand economy. I mean, we buy things from people, we never talk to them or see them again at all. From what I hear of a one-night stand. But what we really need to have is a relationship economy. We need to sort of know. I mean, you hear about recalls all the time. How many recalls have you heard that have taken place in the Northwest? Not a lot. There was a recall about 2 weeks ago for chicken in New Jersey. I mean, wouldn't you feel more comfortable buying your products from somebody that you knew, somebody in your community, somebody in your region, or somebody in your state, or even the Northwest region? You feel just a little bit more comfortable buying those particular products. And finally, those stores make your community unique, especially in rural areas. When you go out to a community, you have no interest in buying something that you could get in a store that you can get in your own backyard, and especially the way travel things are right now. I mean, trying to lug that stuff back in your luggage, if you can get it at home, get it at home. But if you in the community do not shop at some of the unique stores that you have, why should anybody else? And by the way, if you don't shop at them, there's a good chance that they're not going to survive very much longer. Because if you don't shop at them, they are going to go out of business. Okay? So, keep that in mind. How many people have seen this particular ad here? I've grown your picture from here. I know you can't probably read this, but you may have heard of this campaign done by McDonald's. And essentially what the campaign says is that it recognizes that Washington is a state that finds it very important to buy local products. And as a result, they have focused on telling you all that they have done for buying your products. 95 out of 100 French fries that you eat at McDonald's, they tell you, is grown from a Washington potato. 500,000 gallons of milk were purchased from the 500 dairy farmers in Washington. And 13 million pounds of apples were picked from Washington. They recognize that you will have more of a tendency to buy a McDonald's product, recognizing that the food comes from here. In fact, I just saw just the other day, Burger King has started on this campaign as well, which I thought was really interesting. And I'm telling you this example for a reason, because most people think that buy local programs are all about local businesses. But it's not. It's important whether it's a big box company or whether it's a franchise that economic developers engage those people, talk to them about the idea of buying local, whether it's paper products or accounting services or legal services, something like that, because these managers of these places live in your community. So they will understand that if you put more money in the community, it puts more money in their pockets and the better chances of them going out and buying things at that store, whether it's McDonald's or Burger King, will do that. So you want to think about putting together Think Local First programs as well. Okay? What else? Those are great earrings. I'm sorry. I really like those earrings. And I only said, and if I were to ask you if I could have those earrings so I could give them to my girlfriend, would you just give them to me for free?
Yeah,
No, you wouldn't. No. Come on, let's get real here. You wouldn't give them to me not because you're saying to yourself, I can't believe this guy has a girlfriend. No, you're saying this because it is a unique asset that she has. And just as every single person in this room has a unique asset, so too does every community. The problem is that many people don't recognize the unique assets that are right in front of them in their own community. Sort of reminds me of the story of Yogi Berra, the overly enthusiastic baseball fan. It's the bottom of the ninth, and all of a sudden, two people jump out onto the field, stark naked, slide into home plate next to Yogi, and then run back into the stands and get lost amongst the crowd. Well, Yogi's recounting that story back to his wife later on that evening, and she says to him, were they males or were they females? And he thinks about it for a little bit and says, I don't know, they were wearing bags over their heads. Now, some of you are going to get that joke later on this evening. And now the point that I'm trying to make is that people in communities do not recognize all the unique assets that they have in their communities. Unique assets that they can turn into entrepreneurial opportunities. How many people were born and raised in a house that had a front porch? How many people have front porch? Yeah, a long time ago, they used to build houses with front porches, and front porches were wonderful. Front porches were wonderful because you could sit on those front porches and those Edith Ann rockers, and you could rock real fast, and you could have your friends on the porch, and you were having rocker races, and you talk to them about what you were going to do during the day, and you could talk to them about what your dreams were, you could talk to them about what you were going to be when you grew up. It was wonderful to have a front porch. Or your parents would sit on the rockers, and you'd sit on the steps there, and your parents would talk to you about some sort of wisdom or some sort of ideas about what it was like growing up and the opportunities that you had to take advantage of. And your parents tried to give you all this type of wisdom that you tried to take in while on the front porch. They don't make front porches anymore in houses. And I think that's what we need to have. We need to have more what I call front porch economic development.
Wow.
And what I like about front porch economic development is that USDA is a program, is an organization that I think established one of the best front porch economic development programs in the SET program. What a great program that was. Kudos to Paul Johnson. Nice round of applause for Paul for what he put together. I think I spent about 9 months with Paul working on this program. Well, actually, I was the driver for Paul. I really didn't work on this program that much. But he worked tirelessly to make sure that 8 counties in this Northwest region could come together amongst themselves and talk about the issues that were important to them. And let's face it, if you don't know this, Washington State was the leader in that particular program as well, all over the United States, even honored one of the programs at the White House. Great job. Great. We need to have more front porch economics. We don't have that anymore. What we do is we get on our little phones and tweet our 144 characters, or we go downstairs and we'll type messages, or what we'll do is we'll get on the phone and we'll complain on talk radio. So how can you deal with this? How do you have good front porch economic development? And the way to do that is to conduct asset mapping sessions, just like Paul did. Even before a strategic planning session would take place, get people in the room to identify the assets, both human and tangible ones. You have humans that have great skills that can create opportunities. You have tangible products in your community. Somebody probably made those earrings. Take a look at what the unique assets that you have in your community to create entrepreneurial opportunities. And I hope more programs like the SET program take place. And I will more than be willing to be the driver for anybody that's interested in that. So, anyway, I'm curious to know whether any of this stuff that I'm talking about is resonating with people. So let me get an idea of what people are thinking at real quickly. Just by a show of hands, have people learned anything from this presentation? Raise your hands if there's at least 1 or 2 things that you've learned from this presentation. Okay. How many people right now are thinking to themselves, I wonder if there's more lasagna? Yeah. Probably a lot. Sorry. A little more. And how many people are thinking to themselves right now, by a show of hands, that I'd like to buy this guy a drink right now? Well, it's a human resource guy, so that may be bad. Well, what I'm going to do right now is, because I've really totally lost my place in my notes now, I want to talk a little about theory. I know people don't like to talk about theory. I hated it in college, but I want to talk about theory a little bit. Because there's a theory in economic development, it's called the stool theory. By the way, it's not medical terminology that I'm using. But essentially, the stool theory in economic development, it's been around forever, that economic developers are practicing, states that there are 3 legs that support economic development. If any of these 3 legs don't work, if you don't pay attention to any of these legs, then your economic development program is not going to work, it's not going to be successful, you'll never have sustainable communities. And just for those of you, just bear with me, for those of you who already know this, the 3 legs of the stool consist of community development. We talk about community development. We talk about the reasons why people live in a community. We live in a community, as I mentioned, for good schools, good parks, good roads, good neighbors, all of that. That's community development. Okay? The second leg of the stool right now is called business retention and expansion. And oftentimes, this is when economic developers and city governments will send out surveys to businesses, and they'll ask them the normal questions and say, we're here from the government, we're here to help you, what can we do for you? This is often considered to be the Rodney Dangerfield of economic development. It never gets any respect. And you know why it doesn't get any respect? Because everybody wants to do the 3rd leg of the stool. Everybody wants to do business attraction. That's the sexy part of economic development. It's the part where you get to cut the ribbon. It's the part where you get to shovel dirt from one side of the road to the other. It's the part where you get to get your picture in the paper and they talk to you about the number of jobs that you're going to create in your community in the next 3 and 4 and 5 years down the road. If communities had their choice, they would always choose business attraction. It's like Halloween candy. Remember when you were a kid when you first discovered that Halloween was going to take place and you spent weeks or months trying to prepare your costume, and then Halloween would come and you go around the neighborhood, you knock on doors, you yell trick or treat, and you got candy. It doesn't happen any other time of the year. Trust me, I've tried it. It doesn't work at all. And the only thing that you can think of prior to Halloween, there's just one thing. And that one thing, get candy. All you can think about. Mars bars, Snickers, Nestle's Crunch. Get candy, get candy, get candy. That's all you can think of. Well, it's the same way in economic development. When people talk about economic development, there's really only one thing that goes through their mind. And that one thing, get a company. We can get Amazon here. We can get Microsoft here. Boeing can be in our own backyard. This is a great community. They would love this community. Get a company, get a company, get a company. That's all they think about. Well, there are a lot of similarities, by the way, between business attraction and Halloween. First of all, we all know it's going to take time. It's going to take resources. And at the same time, once you get your product home, it may not be exactly what you want. There is one similarity between the two. You know that Halloween is going to come around at least once a year. You do not know that about business attraction. You do not know that you can relocate a company at least once a year into your community. You don't know that. So I don't like to think about it in terms of candy. What I do like to do is I like to think economic development in terms of cold medicine. I mean, when you have a cold, you go to the drugstore, and you see all these drugs on the counter. I mean, there's something for sinus, something for headache, something for everything. Just out of curiosity, when you have a cold, what product do you use more than not? Just shout out something. I don't care. NyQuil, absolutely. It's the moonshine of medicine. It's 180 proof. I mean, why would you choose anything else? And you know why people choose NyQuil? Is because it's fast-acting and long-lasting. And that's the type of strategic plan you want to have in economic development. You want to look at your community and see what are some of the things that you can do right away. Take a look at the outside of your community. Take a look at the sign that introduces your community. Is it shorn? Is it old? Does it need painting? Does it need remodeling? Think about it. Take a look at that sign. And then take a drive through downtown. As you take a drive through downtown, do you have a lot of vacancies in your community is all? Or is it really a place that people would drive through and stop and want to spend money? Or are they going to people just drive on through in your community? Take a look at what your community looks like. There are lots of inexpensive things that you can do to spruce up your downtown. Becky McRae, by the way, just wrote a great article about 12 things you can do with vacancies in downtown. And let me know if you want a copy of it, because it's really, truly, really good. So take a look and see what are some of the inexpensive things that you can do in your community, from putting flowers out and benches to covering up some of the vacancy signs and drawing murals on the windows. There are all sorts of things that you could do. And long-lasting. You want to also make sure that you have long-lasting strategic plans. You want to take a look and see whether you have access to funds, whether businesses can tap into that for microloan programs so they can expand their business. You want to make sure that you also have a business plan competition, putting real money on the table so that kids can decide, yeah, I'm going to go to college, but I know that I can come back to this community right here and start my own business. Fast-acting and long-lasting. Those are the sort of things that you want to take a look for when you develop a strategic plan as well. So what I'd like to do now is I would like to sort of propose, one of the things that Mario asked me to do is come up with some new ideas about what's doing in economic development. So I would like to propose a new 21st century stool theory that economic development organizations and community development organizations can live by. And the first one is about asset development. And when I talk about asset development, by the way, I'm still talking about community development in some respects. I'm still talking about the reasons why people live in a community, okay? But I'm also talking about infrastructure. Infrastructure is very important to a community. It's not just about the schools, but it's also about power. It's about water. It's about sewage. This is a list right here of a report card that comes out by the American Society for Civil Engineers. And these are the things that they look at. And it's interesting because these are the same things that people who want to relocate their business will look at as well. It's the same things that young families who want to look at when they decide to relocate into a community. They look at these 12 or 13 things, whatever it is. And by the way, the average the GPA in the United States for the work that we've done in our infrastructure is a D+. That's their grade. Washington has a C. That was our average overall for all of these things. And by the way, if you're not familiar with this report card, you can just Google Infrastructure Report Card 2013. There is a whole report on Washington State where it details all of these particular things from the bridges to the dams and what their grade is and what improvements need to be done as well. So if you're interested, take a look at that. It's a very interesting perspective on the infrastructure. And we recognize, especially in Washington after the Skagit River Bridge, realize how important it is to invest in infrastructure. So one of the things you need to invest in asset development. In fact, this whole three-legged stool, what I'm giving you is sort of a measurement of what we should be investing in, whether it be USDA or EDA or anything like that, in order to have sustainable communities. And by the way, there's something missing on this report card. And that what's missing is broadband. We want to make sure that communities, especially rural, have broadband. And broadband is nothing more than having terminals and computers and websites that are able to be connected and communicated with people all over the world. And broadband is truly important because in the first place it will help businesses expand, it will increase their sales, and it's going to transform the way healthcare is being delivered with better outcomes and lower cost. And it's also a mechanism to keep kids into the community because they'll realize that if they have a product or service that they have, that they can actually sell it from their own area. They can sell it from their own. I'm talking to some people earlier. I just took a tour of a number of high schools in Washington State. And I talked to kids in these rural communities and asking them what their dreams and what they wanted to do was. They want to stay in their own community, but they don't see the opportunities. So we need to be aware of that because it truly is very important. The other thing that I think is important, the second type of asset that is important to invest in is arts and culture. And if you want youth to stay in the community, do not overlook the importance of arts and culture and nonprofit organizations. There used to be a period of time where it was about the me generation. It's not about the me generation anymore. This next generation of people that are in communities, it's about we. They want to be part of the community. They want to volunteer. They want to be philanthropic in the communities as well. So it's good to partner with those particular people that are in there. And this is just data that may be interesting to you. A ton of expenditures. $135 billion is spent in arts and culture. It creates about 4 million jobs. And in addition to that, it provides money to the local, to state, and federal government so you can continue to invest in the community as well. And that's what you want to do, to continue to have that investment so these things do not falter in your community. A good painting, a great play, a sweeping symphony, a jazz concert, these are the things that broaden our minds. These are the things that enhance our imagination, and these are the things that heighten our senses. Quality of life is back in communities. It used to be the other way around, because people would actually go to where the jobs were. But now, companies and jobs are looking for where the people are. So if you want to attract people, make sure you pay attention to your arts and culture and continue to invest in those organizations as well. Adding more foot-tapping, smile-inducing moments to our lives is good, sound public policy. The second leg of the stool that I want to talk about is innovation and entrepreneurial development. And this is where you begin to educate and train the next generation of leaders, the next generation of entrepreneurs and innovators. And keep in mind, I have put innovation and entrepreneurship here together. And the reason is because innovation has absolutely no value at all unless it is pursued by entrepreneurs. Henry Ford did not invent the automobile. What he did was to manufacture the automobile so that it was more affordable to the middle class. The internet did not change the way the world worked. The commercialization of the internet did. Innovation creates no sales at all. Entrepreneurs do. So it's really important that we recognize this and we marry innovation and entrepreneurship together. Because we have tons of innovation, probably the most overused word in economic development right now. It's everywhere. It's on strategic plans. It's on business plans. It's on shirts that I own in my closet. So we want to make sure that we put these two together, innovation and entrepreneurship. So how do we do that? Well, one of the things that we want to do that is to start kids at a very early age. Do not take away that creativity that we need to have. We have kids going to sport camps and camping camps, and we need to have entrepreneurial camps as well to sort of continue to teach kids to keep that creativity that they have, that as they get older they begin to lose because we don't foster that creativity. Sort of like the story of the little girl in the back of the classroom who's drawing a picture, and the teacher comes up behind her and says, "What are you doing? What are you drawing?" And the little girl says, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher says, "Well, nobody knows what God looks like." And the little girl shot back, "Well, they will in a minute." We have a tendency to foster and get rid of that creativity in individuals, and we really need to recognize how important it is. So we should begin having not only entrepreneur camps, but also participate in something called National Lemonade Day. Build a stand, spark a dream. Last year, this is where kids learn how to start, own, and operate their own business. Last year, there were 150,000 lemonade stands in 36 different cities taking place in May. I think May 1 is Lemonade Day. This year, Google has joined on with them, and their goal is to create 1 million lemonade stands in 100 different cities. We don't have any in Washington right now that have joined onto the effort. We need to do that. We need to be a part of Lemonade Stand Day, Lemonade Day. And then once kids get old enough, they enter into middle school. What do you do with that? Well, that's a good time to start introducing the idea of mentorship. Mentorship is really important. In fact, it's the #1 thing in a survey that came up that businesses wanted, startups and entrepreneurs more than anything else, more than access to capital. Mentorship. We need to foster that mentorship and have kids that are able to do that so that kids can learn and get a better idea. Have entrepreneurs come into the community so that they can talk about what it's like to own their own business, what it's like to be your own boss, what it's like to have your own ideas and make them into products and services. And then once they get into high school, then we want to make sure what they do is have an opportunity to participate in a business plan competition. A business plan competition that puts real money on the table so that kids will make that decision and recognize they can have a business in their own community, or they can come back and use that money. A lot of business plan competitions are taking place right now, but a lot of times kids will take that money and go to Hawaii or Bora Bora or wherever they go. More and more, I met with, about 2 months ago, with the coordinators of business plan competition, and that's one of the things that they want to stop doing. They want the money that banks are putting up and communities are putting up so that they can invest in their own community. And education is not just about scholarship, but also about successful adulthood. And I think we need to remember that. And I think what I like about community colleges is that community colleges do that. Community colleges are developing some great models and great jobs as well working with businesses. And the third leg of the stool, by the way, is about technical assistance. I mean, one of the things that USDA does great is the idea of technical assistance, and I applaud the work that you do with them. But when we talk about technical assistance, we're not talking about just sending out surveys and saying, "I'm here from the government, here to help you." What we're talking about when we talk about technical assistance is the idea of having the public and private sector join together to work with small businesses, with startups, with entrepreneurs, and deal with the issue of peer-to-peer mentoring and market intelligence and staffing assessments and export assistance. The public sector can't do all of these things, but combination, there's lots of phases to start a business if you want to be sustainable, starting from coming up with an idea to the very end of being sustainable. And in order to do that, it's important to have the public and private sector beyond that. A lot of communities, especially rural communities, probably only have 1 or 2 people that are doing this. And they always say, well, we can't do all of these things. I mean, we can't do this entire stool. We need some help. Well, this is why this is actually one of my favorite graphics. I don't really know whether you can see this graphic or not. But on the outside of this graph, they're all activities that are involved in economic development. And on the inside of this particular graph are organizations whose primary mission is to support those activities. And almost every single community has every one of these associations or organizations in their community. That's what we need to do. We need to connect to those people and make sure that the whole community is involved in trying to make your community sustainable so that you can have more money at the end of the day than you do at the beginning of the day. Now, you'd think now with all these people that are doing this, with grants that are being given out, with the internet being out there, you would think that all economic development would take place quickly, but it doesn't. People have to realize, especially when you talk about measurements, that economic development is going to take time. It doesn't matter whether it's community growth or business growth or personal growth. Just a real quick story. I had a birthday not too long ago. My kids gave me as a birthday gift. By the way, I have two kids, one who wants to be a lawyer and the other who's going to need a lawyer. But I have two kids, and they gave me as a gift, birthday gift, an exercise video. Now, I absolutely hate to exercise. I don't enjoy it at all. Most people know that I don't. But my kids gave me this gift. I really didn't have any choice to do so. So I took it downstairs, popped in the DVD. It didn't work. There was some sort of malfunction or something. I don't know. But my kids gave it to me. I had to do something with it. I decided to take it back and return it and get something else. So I popped it out of the DVD, go upstairs, get in my car, drive to the video store. Yeah, I'm one of the few people who still goes to the video store, at least for the purpose of this story, okay? So just go with me here, okay? So I go to the video store, I get in line, and I finally get up to the counter. There's a little blue-haired lady at the counter, and I say to her, I put the DVD on the counter, and I say, I want to exchange it for something else. It doesn't work. And the little old lady looks at me, and she says, well, honey, these things take time. Well, so too does economic development. There's no magic genie that's going to come into your community and put more money at the end of the day than you have at the beginning of the day. There's no such thing as instant gratification when it comes to economic development. Okay, I can see people are beginning to start looking at their watches. By the way, it never bothers me when people look at their watches when I'm speaking. It concerns me a little when they tap it and put it next to their ear and see if it's working. But let me come to a conclusion real quick by giving you a UC Timmy. Everybody know what a UC Timmy is? No? How many people remember the TV show Lassie? Lassie was this incredibly brilliant, Harvard-educated dog that lived with this incredibly stupid farm family. And at least once a week, there was always some life-threatening activity that took place. The father would be underneath the tractor. Timmy had fallen into a well. Lassie would be the only one that would be around, so Lassie would go get help as fast as she could go, and she'd get to the door, and she'd begin to whine and whimper and scratch at the door. The mother would open the door and say, "Are you hungry, girl? Are you hungry?" Now, we all know that any normal dog would take the food, lick themselves, and go to sleep. But no, not Lassie at all. Lassie would keep whining and whimpering and scratching at the floor until finally the mother realized that something was wrong. She'd go get help. The father was rescued from the tractor. Timmy was rescued from the well. And then they'd go home and, I don't know, Lassie would go upstairs and fill out agricultural subsidy report forms for USDA or something like that. I'm not really sure what Lassie would do. But that wouldn't be the end of the story. The end of the story would then have the mother and the father come to Timmy's room and want to give him some sort of lesson, some sort of wisdom that he could take with him as he grew older. And they would start each lesson by saying, "You see, Timmy." So, here's my "You see, Timmy" to conclude this presentation. They say that there are three types of people that live in a community. Those that make things happen, those that watch things happen, and those that wonder what the hell is happening. The people in this room, the people who are the public servants, are those people that make things happen. You make things happen through your grants, through your technical assistance, through your ability to facilitate strategic planning and strategic thinking sessions so that you can have stimulating conversations, new ideas, and you have an understanding of exactly what economic development is. Thank you very much.